And we are live.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever in the world you are. It's V the Grill Economist, and it is today. We're a day late, but we're never short. It's none other than hanging with Harley. Harley Schlanger, a man who needs no introduction. He is the voice of reason in this crazy wilderness that we call the world. And there's a lot to cover. So without further ado, Harley, how are you, sir?
Well, the craziness continues, so there's definitely a lot for us to talk about.
Absolutely, man. Where do you want to begin? You want to start with these crazy nut jobs in the House and the Senate who couldn't pass anything all year, but when it comes to Russian sanctions and suiciding the U.S. economy, they were not only so more than willing, they rapidly, without any problems whatsoever, Harley, were able to pass this bill and then circle jerk each other right after it was done.
Well, and they did it, the Republicans, over the president's objection.
Yeah,
I think, look, this is not business as usual. This is treason
it is.
because what's happened is that since the summit, the Hamburg summit, where Trump and Putin sat down and hammered out an agreement to collaborate in Syria and probably also in Iraq to coordinate the destruction and the wipeout of ISIS and Al Qaeda, which is a total break from the Obama and the Bush policies. From the minute that started, ISIS and Al Qaeda's days were numbered.
Right.
And we've seen the progress made. The ceasefires are holding, they're expanding the ceasefire areas. The Russians and the Americans are talking. And this is what everyone wanted, right? Well, no. We know that Obama didn't want it. Obama wanted continued war. We know that the security state, Clapper, Brennan, and others wanted to continue the war because they were the ones who were funding and arming ISIS and Al Qaeda. And now we see that the members of the US Senate in both parties and members of the House in both parties are committed to war and protecting terrorists. Because make no mistake about it, this is a sabotage.
Right.
Trump fulfilling his promise to work with Russia to defeat terrorism. And this is a blow to that cooperation. The Russians had no choice but to retaliate. The Europeans who, were being brought around to Trump's view on fighting terrorism, they're now going to be hurt by this. So this is just a completely asinine move by members of the Congress in both parties by overwhelming numbers. And I think the American people have to ask themselves, what do we do with these damn dangerous clowns?
Yeah, I think that is the question. And, we have that angle to really look upon. What are we going to do with these idiots? And I think the answer is the American public has to really vote these clowns out of office come 2018. And we need to, instill term limits for congressmen and senators, Harley.
Well, the first thing that has to be done is, and I think Trump is moving to do this, to clarify his voice. Whatever Scaramucci says in his language, rather salty language, what he's trying to do is make sure that what Trump wants to do and is trying to do is made clear
Right.
without the background noise of the Priebus networks. Because look, Reince Priebus was never a pro-Trumper. He was a representative of the old Bush machine in the Republican Party.
Correct.
There have already been two of his top subordinates, Katie Walsh and this guy Smart, who have been forced to leave because of leaking.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Scaramucci's trying to clean house to make sure the message gets through. But now it's up to Trump to do it. And I think what he did in Youngstown this last week with this campaign type rally is a step in the right direction. But he's got to be even more clear. He has to call out people like McCain, Lindsey Graham, Cardin, the Democrat from Maryland,
Yeah.
the leaders in the House and Senate in both parties. He has to call them out and say to the American people, they just voted to support the people who brought down the Trade Center. They just
Right.
voted to support the people who are committing terrorism throughout the world, including in the United States. And I think he's got to do that clearly.
Mm-hmm.
And he's got to include Obama in the mix because Obama was the one whose policy Trump is breaking. And it's being defended now by the Republicans in the House and Senate. It's just an amazing scene.
I've never seen anything like this whatsoever. Um, what's the European reaction right now? Because we're seeing over in the EU, they're like, no, we're not going to put up with another round of sanctions. It's hurt our economy before. It's going to hurt our economy yet again, and we're not going to let you do it. And the EU is going to threaten the US with sanctions. What say you, Harley?
Well, the EU people are confused because, as I said, some of them were coming around to Trump's view. I think
Sure.
Macron was coming around to support what Trump was saying about no more regime changes and you fight to crush the terrorists.
Correct.
In Germany, there's sympathy with that view. You see it in Eastern Europe. So all of a sudden, the US Congress is saying, no, we're going to continue the same old failed policy. Now,
Right.
I think the other part of this, which is really a compelling story, and I know you've been covering this, is the VIPS report, the Veteran Intelligence Professionals for Sanity,
Mm-hmm.
which includes some of the originators of cybersecurity for the National Security Agency, William Binney and others.
Right.
They did a forensic study which shows conclusively that the DNC documents that were provided to WikiLeaks were leaked, not hacked. And then a so called hack job was done later to put a Russian thumbprint on the release of the documents,
Right.
which now actually is interesting. It brings up the whole question of whether Guccifer even exists or is Guccifer a CIA cutout?
Right. Exactly. And most likely, the scenario here is that Guccifer 2.0 is just a fake.
Yeah. And so what you have is the evidence that Trump needs to show that there never was a Russian operation against the US election. So there never was collusion by Trump with anybody. That all of this was designed to do what? To stop Trump from working with Russia, from working with China, and from breaking with Wall Street. And so far, they haven't completely prevented him from the work with Russia and China, but he's done nothing to go after Wall Street.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is in part because his hands are tied. He's got his back to the wall, but he's got to fight more effectively. And it also means the American people, those who know this, those who listen to you, to your website, who are part of the alternative news network, they have to go out and fight to get the truth out. It's not enough to think Trump will tweet it out and it will work. We've got to have a citizen mobilization in this country that
Right.
goes against Wall Street, that goes against the deep state, and keeps going until these guys end up in prison.
I agree. Absolutely, 1000%. It has to start and has to start immediately. I think the people need to understand what's going to happen, because if this sanction crap goes through, we're going to economically hurt ourselves. We're going to be isolated, and we're basically going to usher the European Union to be more fully integrated into the Eurasian Economic Union, as well as the One Belt, One Road initiative. They get it integrated. They enjoy the benefits of it, and we're going to be on the outside looking in, Harley.
Well, let me give you another example of what's confronting Germany right now. All of a sudden, all the auto companies in Germany are considered a cartel that are violating CO2 monitoring and all sorts of
Yeah,
other things. There's a huge attack. Now, some of this is just environmental lunacy.
correct.
People rather ride bicycles or skateboards and not have autos at all. But it's also designed to destroy the central driver of the German economy, which is the machine tool sector in the auto industry.
Right.
It's the most advanced in the world. The German cars are excellent automobiles.
Best in the world.
And this argument that the German trade surplus is the problem. Well, the Germans have benefited from a low euro, but that's starting to shift. But I think the point is economic warfare is being conducted, and our assessment is it's not coming from Trump and the Trump administration. These are things that were put in place under Obama.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, look at the $18.2 billion fine against Volkswagen. How ridiculous was that? When GM had faulty airbags and faulty sensors that killed
Killed people.
killed
Yeah,
people. 134 people were killed, and the only thing that happened is Mary Barra appeared before Senate. That was
yeah,
it. I
yeah.
mean, ridiculous. They got a slap on the wrist, and Volkswagen, because of some questionable emission testing by some environmental nut job professor. Okay, all of a sudden he's like, "Ooh, the hydrocarbons were up a 0.01%. Oh my God, the nitrogen levels were up. Oh my God, that's going to lead
Volkswagen is melting the Antarctic.
yeah, exactly, and that's going to lead to an $18.2 billion fine. No, the whole thing is this: we're being shoved down a piece of junk technology like that garbage Tesla, the garbage car called the Tesla Harley. Meanwhile,
Yeah.
Volkswagen has a 1.6 liter diesel that's actually built in the U.S. and shipped over to Germany that gets 77 miles per gallon that we can't touch.
No, it's economic warfare, and I'll tell
It
you the
is.
other thing that's waking up the Germans is that there's a group called the Five Wise Men,
Mm,
who are basically the economic thinkers who are both in business and also academic. They're putting out reports that the all the talk about the strength of the banking system in Europe is nonsense. And what one of them reported, the one woman who's one of the Five Wise Men, what she said, which is very significant, is that it's the derivatives that are going to bring down the banking system.
yeah,
And this is already happening with the Italians, with the British banks. The US banking system is, if you count the actual risk as opposed to the risk weighted analysis, which is designed to protect them, but the actual risk that they're facing, uh, this is much worse than it was in the summer of 2008.
correct.
And so the Europeans see this. They that there's a life preserver being tossed to them by the Chinese, and
Right.
that if they climb aboard, this will open up Eurasia. It will open up India. It will open up Middle Eastern markets, especially if you end the wars in the Middle East.
Hmm.
And so the strategic argument in Europe is increasingly moving toward recognizing that a lot of Trump's criticisms of Europe have been right. They're not so different from what you and I have been saying for a long time.
Right.
Now, if they move in that direction, and Trump is moving in that direction, what's the problem? Wall Street has the Congress by the balls. There's no other way to look at
Right.
it. And well, most of the congressmen don't have balls, and I'm not just talking about the women. They've already put them in a blind trust.
Correct.
So Congress is operating. You saw it again with the sabotage of, even though I think the Trump care was flawed from the beginning,
Yeah.
you saw how McCain orchestrated the sabotage of a repeal of Obamacare.
Right.
So Trump's problem is, as I've reported to you repeatedly, is the Republican Party. That the Republicans, look, the Democrats we know are crazy. I'm sure you were laughing when you saw the rollout of their new slogan, the Papa John pizza knockoff, better wages, better jobs. But I found something very interesting from Thomas Frank, who's a pretty strong critic of the Democratic Party and neoliberalism. In 1993, one of the lobbying firms that was hired to promote NAFTA put out stationery with the headline NAFTA, better jobs, better wages. So, how idiotic could these Democrats be than to take the slogan from a program that cost more jobs and more wages than anything in recent history?
Hmm.
So the Democrats, forget them, they're crazy.
Right.
Uh, but the Republicans are showing their treachery as well. And the
Yeah,
sanctions,
they're running safety for the Democrats. They're providing the blockage, they're providing the cover and the shielding for these ridiculous policies. It's a do nothing Congress yet again.
well, this is probably the biggest do nothing Congress ever.
Ever.
But
214 days on vacation. 214 days.
I think, sometimes you're tempted to say that they should stay on vacation 365 days a year.
They should.
Their brains are on vacation 365 days a year. But like, what's the solution? Trump has to come out forcefully telling the truth. And one of the ways he can do it is release the files that show that the CIA under Obama, with Obama's direct support, was involved in arming and promoting terrorism in the Middle East to try and regime change in Syria.
Hmm.
Secondly, that Obama knew full well that Dodd-Frank was going to undermine the real economy and create a new bubble, which we're seeing now in the stock market and to some extent in other financial areas. That Obama was fully witting in creating the phone operation with British intelligence, that the Russians hacked the election and meddled in the election and Trump colluded. Now, if you do those three things, then these networks can, and the Congress can be forced to respond to reality. But it's coming down to Trump having to go to the American people and the American people responding.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the only thing that's going to work here. The American people have to respond, Harley. They have to respond. We cannot, this year, we cannot be sitting around idly. We have to be incredibly proactive to get the type of agenda that we voted for.
What you saw, I don't know if you saw the rally in Youngstown, Ohio earlier this week,
No.
but Youngstown used to be a solidly Democratic center.
Right.
And the mayor of Youngstown, who's a Democrat, was asked, why are so many people here enthusiastic for Trump? And he said, because most people here don't give a flip about the Russian issue. They want to know, can we get jobs? Can we get
That's
the
it.
economy?
Right.
And
Exactly right.
that,
And Trump is smart. He's winning the entire Rust Belt. He's locking it up.
yeah. And, you know, on the two coasts, you have the Pelosi faction, which seem to think that unless you're sipping Chablis and eating brie on one of the coasts, you're a doofus who doesn't deserve any help.
Right.
And I think this is the, you know, we're not going to see the country split, but we're going to see an incredible potential now to mobilize people for the American system. And that's one of the reasons why we at LaRouche PAC keep putting up front what's happening with China. And with all its problems, and look, China's not a perfect state, it's got all
Correct.
kinds of problems, but it's moving the economy. And the solution to most of these social problems and the ills of so-called pollution and inequality is move the physical economy, get it going, create good jobs, good opportunities, and other things will fall into place.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely agree. Harley, we got about 2 minutes left. Why don't you share with us your final thoughts and your closing statements and how people could follow the work at LaRouche PAC?
Well, the best thing I would recommend is go to larouchepac.com and read the story that was put out first in Consortium News about the Veterans Intelligence Professionals for Sanity, their forensic findings on the so-called Russian hacking.
Yeah.
Read it, study it, and then start discussing it with people. You don't have to discuss things you don't know because this question of coding is highly technical. But what they break down for you is a fact. And the original one was a leak. It was not a hack. And the leak exposed the Democratic Party as a bunch of frauds and cheats. And instead of dealing with that, they created the story that it was a Russian hack to interfere with the election. And they even simulated a Russian hack.
Yeah.
What are they covering up? What are they hiding? And it's what you and I have been discussing.
Yeah.
You can break out of this old paradigm. But to do it, you have to break the power of those who created the paradigm and are clinging to it with their dirty fingernails to their death. And they've got to have that grip broken. And that's going to take a mobilization of people who know what the issues are. So go to larouchepac.com, study that, and listen to the programs on Rogue Money where you get more insights into how they're manipulating the economy to try and make it look like everything's well and good while they're stealing us all blind.
Right, exactly correct. You know, another thing also I forgot to mention, Harley, you know, recently we had Imran Awaz, the right-hand IT man who was for Deborah Wasserman Schultz, the corrupt wench of the DNC, and he's been arrested. It's every day that goes by, it looks like a major intelligence job. The guy had a remote server offsite that was set up to capture emails from over 30 Democratic members of Congress, as well as, you know, he siphoned over $5 million off the DNC to Pakistan. He spent most of his time in Pakistan. We don't know where the millions of dollars went. We can't trace it. We can't find it. Before he was caught and arrested at Dulles Airport, he wired $300,000 to Pakistan. The month before that, his wife was caught and detained at the airport, trying to leave the country with dozens of suitcases and cardboard boxes and $12,000 of cash on her. That if you and I were to do it, Harley, we would be thrown in jail. We would have our cash confiscated at the very least. But somehow this woman was given the clearance to continue flying. This reeks to high heaven.
The reason you wouldn't get a pass is because you don't work for Deborah Wasserman Schultz.
Bingo.
Here's the key thing. When it became clear to some Democratic offices that this guy was some kind of intelligence operation, they fired him. Right. Wasserman Schultz kept him on and defended him right up to the point that he was caught trying to leave the country with the money.
Still was on payroll, by the way.
Yeah. So what was he doing? What did she know about it? And also, brings us to a final point. People are wondering, why is Trump going after Sessions? Well, there are these issues that should be investigated, including the leaks from inside the White House, leaks from the intelligence community, the hacking, the phony hacking story. And Sessions is keeping an extremely low profile on these things. And, I don't know whether, the other thing is that I don't think Sessions will fire Mueller, but I think Mueller has to be fired.
Yeah.
So, it's understandable that Trump is unhappy with this, but Donald's got to get out there, tell the truth, put his confidence back in the American people, rally them around his programs. And that includes, he's got to go back to Glass-Steagall and infrastructure investment, rebuild the physical economy. And if he does that, he'll have the support of the people. And the Congress will either come around to that or they'll be voted out next time.
Exactly correct. Yeah, I think with Sessions, Sessions is more obsessed with cannabis laws and trying to stop the medical use and the judicious use of cannabis, and reinstating the stupid DARE program, which I went through as a kid back in like the early '80s, where everybody that went through DARE became a cokehead by the time they hit high school in the '90s.
As long as you were being dared to use drugs.
You were being dared to use drugs.
Yeah.
I would sit there, Harley. They're like, "Don't do this drug. It makes you feel happy, and you'll feel euphoria." And I'm there as a little kid. I'm like, "So what's the side effects?" The cops are just sitting there talking about benefits.
What's the downside of euphoria?
Exactly.
But the point is that if Sessions were to be focusing on the connection between drug money laundering, guns, and terrorism, that's one thing. But I think he's missing the bigger picture, which is the president, who he's supposed to be serving and protecting on behalf of the American people, is being assaulted from all sides.
Yep.
He not only recused him, Clapper and that whole crowd, including Comey.
I think I dropped off. Hello?
Yeah. Am I still there?
Yeah, I think I dropped off, or you dropped off. I'm not.
Yeah, I can't. There you go. You're back.
Okay.
That was odd.
Was that me or Harley?
Harley, can you? That was both. It was the hangout. The hangout lost. Harley, can you repeat like the last 15 seconds, please?
Yeah.
Please.
All right. Just saying, Sessions has to go after Brennan, Clapper, Comey, go after them for coordinating this coup against the president to cover up the fact that they want war with Russia and support for terrorism globally.
Right. Absolutely correct. It's sedition and treason.
Those are strong words, but they apply.
Yep. Harley Schlanger, thank you so much for joining us, man, and thank you for allowing us to hang with you. Your words are always poignant, informative, and to the point. I can't thank you enough. Thank you so much.
Okay, talk to you next week.
You got it. See, take it away, CJ.